Hi, this is Corey Johnston. In today's lessons, we're going to be discussing truth in the writings of Paul. In the outline we've assembled, it proceeds from a negative to a positive trajectory. So we have to first, we're going to open with a warning of the consequences of suppressing the truth, and then some of the latter-day historical heresies and end-time deception developments we have to do. So that's going to be the business before pleasure. The rest of the verses speak of the positive aspects of the truth, but we're going to start from the negative, dig the dirt out of the way so we can get to the rosier garden as this picks up. So Romans first chapter, we're going to read verses 18 through 25, and you can while you're turning there, I'll let you know that this begins Paul's systematic exposition on the doctrine of universal sin, which goes all the way up to the 20th verse of the third chapter. So verse 18, "For the wrath of Elohim is revealed from the heavens against all wickedness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness." Now, the wrath is not a petulant child or a teenage temper tantrum. It is the wrath of a just, righteous, and sacred Elohim, and he reserves it against those who deserve it. So if you're a purveyor or a purveyor of wickedness or a practitioner of unrighteousness, and if you are suppressing the truth, that's what they're doing. And if you're doing that, there is only one way to do it. How? That's in unrighteousness. And what are some of the ways that the truth is being suppressed in our day and age? Just look at the news media. Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein, they had this information out for years before, but they suppressed it because they were connected to Clinton and they wanted her to be president. But it's just all across academia, this indoctrination, which eliminates the existence, even the idea of God, by making it illegal for children to pray in public schools, is just one of the most absurd and outlandish suppressions. But the context that Paul is writing in is those who forsook. So these are the original Gentiles who forsook the knowledge, and they rejected in the creation, and then they end up worshiping created beings because they worship the Creator. They think they're wise, but they're foolish, and they descend into idolatry. So that is the first consequence of suppressing the truth. You reject an absolute standard and substitute a lie for this. And then he surrenders you to the consequences of your own wayward actions. Verse 25, who changed the truth of Elohim into the falsehood and worshipped and served what was created rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. So they willingly changed. They had the truth. They knew the truth. But they changed it because it didn't suit their agenda. So they perverted the truth and corrupted their worship, and by worshiping a lie, and they really had their priorities, and rather than worshiping the one who made everything, they're worshiping the created items of the earth. And the consequence of this trajectory of idolatry leads to self-indulgence. So we read of the sins of society that form the sewer of society, beginning with homosexuality in verses 26, 27, then the list, verses 29 through 32. That's the one I want people to pay attention to, because we've all done at least one of these things in there. So don't, back off from, the gay people, and see yourself in the book. 2 Timothy 4:2. 2 Timothy 4:2-3. Proclaim the word, be urgent in season, out of season, reprove, warn, appeal, with all patience and teachings. So this is actually a positive into the negative. This is going to bleed into, but this is what the minister can do to counteract such deceptive tendencies and directions, is to, positively proclaim the word. Be ready at all times, in all places, in all context, and do what you have to do, whether it's reprove, warn, appeal, whatever means you need to reach your audience and build their spiritual growth, do what you have to do. And it does demand endurance. It is a marathon, not a sprint, and teaching is just part of the job. And we have to teach in truth, and we can know the truth. We have to know the truth in order for us to teach it. For there shall be a time when they shall not bear sound teaching, but according to their own desires they shall heap up for themselves teachers tickling the air. So sound doctrine is just that which is deviant from truth. It is a lie, and it is shaped by their own desires. So these people prey on the human nature. They appeal to the flesh and the world, and it's just letting your ears go astray. So you can't let your ears determine the message that your mind receives. Don't hear what you want to hear. Gravitate to what you need to know. So then even more specific historical references in the first book of Timothy, chapter 4, verses 2 through 3, or 1 through 3. But the Spirit distinctly says that in the latter times some shall fall away from the faith, paying attention to misleading spirits and teachings of demons, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having been branded on their conscience, forbidding to marry, to abstain from foods which Elohim created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. So the latter days, first off, this is a direct revelation from the Spirit himself. Paul had intimate access and communication with him. These are his words, and he's telling him, he inspired the writing of this, that there's going to be a falling away at the latter A, where people are going to forsake the faith because they're going to be drawn away from people, from wolves in sheep's clothing who are in the Christian church, and they're everywhere in every age, but it's really getting a lot worse with each passing year, it seems, and they're going to be following teachings of demons. So the devil does dwell in the house of God. He is alive and active and present in many churches right now, so he always has a foot in the door, and they are following the demonic, not the divine. They're on the wrong side of the fence, and the consequences and the proof of this is that they speak lies in hypocrisy. Hypocritical defines action, lies define speech, so they are wayward ministers in every direction, and the lies are just seared on their conscience so thoroughly it permeates them that they think it is true. And the forbidding to marry that came with the Catholic Church, although it may not have been until the 1200s. I'm not exactly an expert on the law of chastity or celibacy for their priest, but that did become an official doctrine and has remained intact ever since. And this is just abstain from foods. This was the Jewish element. So Paul is writing in the latter days. The latter days began when he hung on the cross, and they have been with us ever since. So these are alive. But we do read with even more specific attention and detail the one one of lawless, the anti-Messiah one, who is described in verses 9, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 9 through 13. The coming is against the workings of Satan with all his powers and signs and wonders of falsehood. So in the preceding verse, we're told of the coming of the Messiah. He's going to swallow him with his breath. He's going to be no match to him, but before him, it's Satan, and he deceives much of the world through satanic supernaturalism, the principle of Deuteronomy 13, 1 through 3. Don't, if people come into your land and perform miracles and lead you away from God, then they are no good. Get rid of them. And we have to be mindful of this too. We have the warnings in the book of Revelation, and this is another pertinent end times chapter. So Satan operates in falsehood. He is he is a liar and the father of it, we read of in John 8:44. So he traffics in falsehood and deceit, and with all deceit and unrighteousness in those perishing, because they did not receive the love of the truth in order for them to be saved. So we have to love the truth. We have to cling on to it as we would a man to a wife, because the truth is the access and the portal to our salvation. We have to love our life enough to live the truth, which accomplishes, and we have to forsake and eschew and shun and discriminate against that which is deceitful and unrighteousness. These are the ways of the one who mimic the one who is the lawless one. So this is in And for this reason Elohim sends them, a working of delusion, for them to believe the falsehood. So this draws a lot of faith into the doctrine of providence. Why would he allow it? And it's all part of a wise, intricate plan which works out for our benefit. So we do not diminish our faith in his goodness, that he providentially arranges for the falling away, of which he referenced in another chapter and verse, in order that all should be judged who did not believe the truth, but have delighted in unrighteousness. So the purpose for which this is to send is to winnow out the chaff from the wheat, the ones who are not worth saving, the ones who followed the lie all the way unto hell because they delighted in unrighteousness. They lived for it, they loved it, they had an appetite and capacity for it, they did it all night, all day, every day, and throughout the day, and that's because they did not believe in the truth. They had the truth presented to him, but they wanted to go their own way, do their own thing, and be their own judge. But we ought to give thanks to Elohim, always for you, brothers, beloved of the Master, because Elohim from the beginning chose you to be saved in this sanctity of the Spirit and belief and faith in the truth. So faith in the truth, a lot of the truths we know we cannot prove, but we know them by faith. So there is faith in the truth, and faith unlocks greater truths than can understood by human reason. It's difficult to explain, but the important thing is we got to remain grateful that we are aware of his deceptions, and we are immune from it, in as much as we stick our noses in the Bible, keep our eyes on heaven and knees on the ground in prayer. So that is a certain cause for gratitude, and we were chosen before the eternity. I personally believe in the doctrine of predestination. However, I don't think that that's just a minimalization for evangelical incentive, or the possibility that living with mystery is part of what living with faith is. And the truth is, we don't know the beginning from the end, but we do know that he knows from the beginning of the end. So I don't even know if I'm going to make it to heaven, but if I died tonight, I'm pretty sure I would. But now we're going to move to the more positive direction. Ephesians 1 verses 13. In whom you also, having heard the word of truth, the good news of your salvation, in whom also, having believed, you were sealed in the Ruach Kadesh of promise. So we heard the word of truth, and we responded to it, and that was the good news of our salvation. We accepted it, we embraced it as truth, and this is part of our conversion experience. We were never the same ever since, and it's all a matter of belief, and we are sealed. A seal is a mark of ownership or identity, so that means that the Spirit and the promise is sealed to us, that if we hear the word of truth and live by the truth and spread the truth, then the Spirit will be with us wherever we go, and as much as we call him out in prayer and meet the other preconditions. 1 Timothy 3:15. This is, but if I delay, that you might know how you should behave in the house of Elohim, which is in the assembly of the living Elohim, a support and foundation of the truth. So our churches and our assemblies are foundations of truth. These are building blocks of truth in the divine war for its establishment on earth. And but the thing that Paul's communicating to his pastoral protege is that he trusts him to administer the affairs truthfully, honestly, ably, competently, and so truth and love of truth are two things, but we might get getting a little far ahead of ourselves. We're actually going to turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 7 through 8. Therefore cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. For also Messiah our Passover was offered for us. So then let us observe the festival, not with old leaven, nor with leaven of evil and of wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. So leaven is likened to sin, and this was a problem church. The church at Corinth was certainly a problem one. And but he's telling them to get rid of the old nature, cast off the old self, get rid of the grave clothes and put on the grace clothes, be clothed in the righteousness of the Son, and take in the Lord's Supper, or whatever your denomination calls it, with sincerity and truth. So we don't want to lie. We don't want to partake of the communion, or whatever else you call it, with unconfessed sin. We have to do it with sincerity and integrity in order to make the most. But chapter 13, the famous love chapter, this bleeds into love, into truth, which is where this is going to go. 13:6. Love does not rejoice over unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. So the problem people of chapter 5, they were rejoicing in unrighteousness. They were making a mockery of the Lord's Supper, or whatever they called it, the feast, the Last Supper mimic. But love rejoices in the truth, and we have to love the truth, and the truth and love are integrally connected. They are both attributes embodied in perfection and wholeness and totality by Elohim, who is the embodiment of these. So an attribute is different than a description. An attribute is something that can be attributed to something. So that means all truth and all love emanate from him, and we are to speak the truth in love, as we are read. So remember what they're doing and how they're doing in Romans 1:18. Here, what we speak and how we speak. We are told to not speaking the truth, but also in love, but maintaining the truth in love. We grow up in all respects into him who is the head, Messiah. So we've already commented enough on the relationship of truth and love. I just want to share an acronym. This is not an original one. This is something I acquired. I'm a big believer in giving credit where credit is due, but I do not know this man's name. Think. This is to govern our standard of speech. So THINK are each acronyms, which are to govern our standards of speech. So what words we choose. Is it truthful? T. Is it helpful? H. Is it inspiring? I. Is it necessary? N. And is it kind? K. So not every truth is helpful. It's not always necessary or relevant, and sometimes it can be harmful if you point out someone's obvious flaws that they probably are self-conscious about. It's just not gonna go well. So we have to and this is especially challenging when convicting people of sin. So that takes us into a whole nother dimension. But we do have what we speak and how we speak it. So truth, but also in love, much as they are suppressing the truth in all unrighteousness, what and how. We have that same in 1 Timothy 2:4. And we're actually going to start with verse 3. For this is good and acceptable before Elohim our Savior, who desires all men to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. So the truth is something of salvific significance, and the truth of the gospel. There was a heresy known as the Gnostics who taught that there was some secret knowledge that was necessary for salvation, but the truth is simple. We come by the way of the cross, and we are saved in the name. There is one name by which we will be saved. There is only one way. It is straight and narrow, and it ends in the cross, and we have to come to the full-scale repentance at the foot of it sometime in our life, but the cross will humble us. But the truth, so the knowledge of the truth is simple. It's not uncomplicated. If you acknowledge your sin, are sincerely repentant, and ask for forgiveness, you can be forgiven and welcomed into his home. There are, it starts there, but it doesn't quite end there. I don't want to sell any shortcuts to salvation. That would not be trafficking knowledge of the truth, because the truth is there are no shortcuts to salvation. But we have to have the same mind of Elohim, we who minister in his cause and for his kingdom and in his service. We have to have the same sincere desire that all men come to a saving knowledge of the truth. So we have to use the truth that he imparts to us with others to uplift them, to educate them, to edify them, and to prepare them for the battle that is out there. And speaking of now the next verse we're going to head, 2 Timothy 2:15, and we only got one more after that. Do your utmost to present yourself approved to Elohim, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. So the word of truth is our objective measurement and standard for how we are approved or ashamed. Now, to be approved, we have to be proven, so we have to go through the test. We have to be sharpened and refined in the process. And so there's, the truth is not going to be automatic. Not everything is going to make sense. We have to live with mystery, but not forsake the truth. The truth of the resurrection, the truth of the atonement, everything else that is necessary for us to know to make it back to heaven. The truths are actually quite simple. A child can understand them, but an adult can only get in the way. So the challenge in presenting them is to not belittle their simplicity, but also, sound educated when I'm talking about it. But we don't need to be ashamed if we are handling dividing the word of truth, and this connects. The translations are not exact, but Ephesians 6:14, that takes us to the spiritual warfare element. We are the full armor of Elohim is what we need out there, because Satan fights with lies and deceptions, and his lies are packaged as truth. They have the veneer and the superficial appearance of being something they are not. But when we have the belt of truth, we'll read that 14th verse. Stand then, having girded your waist with truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness. So breastplate protects the heart, and righteousness is the shield that catches the enemy's fiery darts. And think if someone was literally sending fiery darts your day, all day, every day, throughout the day, you would not leave your home without a shield of faith. And breastplate of righteousness that protects your heart. So the heart is the center of our heart. Our truth can be processed in the brain and then absorbed in the heart. That's how we live it and learn from it and grow by it. It's ultimately a head matter, but it's also a heart matter. So we have to protect that at all cost. And from our belt, the waist of truth, the waist would have been a belt from which the sword comes, and take also the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of Yahweh. So that's verse 17. Helmet of salvation is if you suffer from wandering thoughts, fill your heads with flood of salvation. If anything is going wrong or you're in a present predicament, just flood your head with thoughts of salvation, what awaits you, and that'll protect you from wandering thoughts and from doubts of doom and despair. But the sword of the truth, a lot of people think, it says it's the word of Yahweh, and a lot of people that think that that's the Bible itself, but I personally think that it is the belt of truth, which is the Bible, and the sword of the Spirit is the sword that you pull out for that occasion. And we personally don't think that Paul wrote Hebrews 4:12, but there we read that the word is likened to a two-edged sword in spirit. But that's all the time we have for today. That's not an exhaustive list on what Paul has to say about truth, but we think we satisfied our purpose. That's all we're out of today. I'll see you soon. Take care until then. Bye-bye.